the makeup of a character. This week I thought we would start off a little bit light and go with the Corpse Bride. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be telling a story about how this character was developed, created, and how exactly they created it in its final stages. And the character I'm going to be focusing on today is going to be Emily, known as the Corpse Bride. So when I was looking up this story, I found some pretty interesting stuff. I couldn't really find any other videos on YouTube necessarily talking about her. I found a lot of conspiracy theories about her being like the aunt of Victoria and all of these just interesting stories. But I don't think I ever saw anyone talking about how she came to be or any inspiration for her character. So I've gone ahead and done that. Sorry if I stop a little bit. I'm kind of getting used to doing this while talking. It's a little bit more hard than I thought it would be. Okay, so as we all know, Helena Bonham Carter plays her, and she is about 18 years old when she's actually killed. Now, there's not actual evidence or anything, that is solid on how she was killed, but assuming that Lord Barkis did kill her, as we learn in the film when she tells him that he left her for dead when she, ran away from home and she took all of her family's money with her and, went to meet him under this big oak tree in the middle of the night so that way they could elope and get married. She ends up getting murdered under that tree. And not really sure how, but considering that Lord Barkis does carry around a sword, we can assume that she was probably stabbed to death, which is terrible. But yeah, I couldn't really find anything on her death, but people have said around the internet and, shown that she may have been buried in a halfway or a really shallow grave just because of the way her body had been decayed. So she had been dead about 9 years when Victor found her and, placed the ring on her finger and everything, and she rises up from her grave underneath the tree. We know this because people have analyzed, how her body looks after this amount of time. She's got, I believe, a hole in her cheek. One of her arms, the flesh is completely gone. You can see part of her ribs, but for the most part, she still has skin. Her hair is still there. She's not a complete skeleton like other people, or other dead people, I should say, that we see in the film. And so it can imply that either she hasn't been dead very long, or she was kind of buried in a way that sort of kind of helped preserve her. So she didn't decay nearly as much, bugs didn't really get to her as much, or the maggots. We can assume, though, that her head is, rotting at this point, though, because she does have the maggot that pops out of her eye, implying that it's been eating at her brain. So, the interesting thing, though, that I did find, the inspiration. So, Tim Burton created this character, and I wanted to know how he came up with this. Why a corpse bride, There had to be some reason why he chose to do something like this. So, when I was looking into it, there was an interview that he had done where he talks about this old, kind of folk tale in Russia. And the movie actually takes place in England, but I'm guessing he just switched it. Not really sure why, actually. I don't think I ever figured that out. But he did change it to England, but the inspiration for the story actually came from Russia. And this came from 19th century. What I found on this was there was a lot of anti-Semites, which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically people that are not big fans of Jewish people. Hateful, not really wanting them around, things like that. So, when a Jewish family would end up marrying their daughters off to, people for whatever reason, the, wealth and stuff like that, on the way to the wedding party, they would be ambushed by these anti-Semites. And what they would do is they would take the bride. And this is just like a really weird, scary thing to talk about, because when you think of your wedding, you're not thinking like something terrible is going to happen to you. But this happened a lot in the 19th century in Russia. They would take the bride, they would take her to the woods, and they would murder her and then bury her in her wedding dress. And the reason they did this was because the women are obviously the ones who end up having children. So they didn't want them to have more Jewish families, more Jewish people around. And so that's what they would do. And so that's where he got the inspiration. And there was like a whole folk tale that went with it. If you want to read more about the folk tale that he kind of came up with, the whole thing of, walking into the woods and proposing to a corpse, I'll definitely link it down below, because it's a really interesting folk tale that I've never heard of. And I feel like not a lot of people know that this is where he got this idea from. So I'll definitely keep that down there. Now, to get into the more technical kind of stuff of it, I did not know that, I knew it was like a stop motion, claymation type of film, but what I didn't know is how exactly they develop those types of characters. So they're actually mechanical and clay sculpted. So they're like these cute little puppets, maybe about like 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet tall. And they put little mechanical workings inside them to create facial expressions, basically. And I thought this was so cool because I'd always thought they were claymation. And if you guys have ever seen those like Wallace and Gromit movies, the really cute one, I think he's like an exterminator and he has like this cute little dog. It was very popular when I was a kid. And it had just come out too. But yeah, I thought it was the same as that, where they would mold them and sculpt them and add new expressions every single time they would stop to basically take a photo to make it look like it was animated by taking just a series of photos and going off of that. But this is different because they actually had mechanical parts in them that they would turn with like a mini screw or like a mini wrench, and it would make them smile or it would make them frown and make these different expressions. And for each of the main characters, so Victor, Victoria, and Emily, they had, I believe it was 14 different models, so that way they could place them throughout the whole set that they created, so that way they wouldn't have as much work to do, and they can already have a few shots lined up with them in that specific area where they needed them to be. And I was a little bit blown away by this. I actually should have looked into where they are. I don't know if they're in his museum or if he kept them, if they got rid of them. I'm sure they kept them, because that's a lot of different models of them. 14 for each of the main characters. Now, another thing that was interesting is they put them on these little pulley type systems that they would also use to kind of mimic their walking. So it's a lot easier, get the shot. They would roll a camera actually at this point. They wouldn't be like taking picture after picture after picture. They would just roll the camera, and as they're moving, they would turn this mechanism, and it made them look like they were walking down the stairs, or if they were walking down the hall or running. And I thought that was kind of cool because there are some parts of the film when I watch it, I notice that it looks a little bit more smooth rather than kind of like tons and tons of pictures being flashed on the screen. And I always thought it was just me, but apparently they really did do that to make it look a little bit smoother, and it also seems like it would be less work if you do that. So I thought that was very cool. Now, what I'm going to talk about next about her character, so with this whole conspiracy theory about her being Victoria's aunt, I believe the story goes that Victoria was very, very little when she went missing. So when she would have eloped with Lord Barkis, she would have been very, very young. Hold on, I'm losing my train of thought. They would also have these little pulley systems that were really thin wires or really thin strings that they would put in her veil and the bottom of her dress. And when I was reading this, I was literally picturing in my head the part where Elder Goodmek sends them to the land of the living, and Emily is really happy to see the moonlight again, and she's dancing around, in the trees and the forest, and just super excited to see the land of the living again. And what I always noticed was how flowy they made her dress and how pretty it looked. And I was wondering, if they're sculpted or they're like these puppets, how could they do that? And so when I was looking into it, they actually did have this little video of behind the scenes of how they made them. And it was basically just really, really thin wires and strings that they would put on the edges of her veil and the edges of her dress. They would then use machines to kind of pull the strings up and around to give it that really flowy look, like it was in the wind. And I thought that was super cool because I'd always wondered how they did that. I thought they really just like set up fans and had it kind of blowing. But I think that they had tried that, but I guess it would be a lot easier to control and get it to look the exact way you want it to if you have a way to control it with the wires like they did. So this look that I'm creating is kind of in like memory of Emily's kind of all over look and feel to her. She's got, that really blue kind of pale skin, but what I always liked about her was that her eyes seemed like they always had makeup, even though they were obviously trying to make them look like they were very sunken in, you know, starting to kind of fall out of the eye socket. And I just always loved that way they paired the blue and that kind of purpley type of black color that she has. So I'm kind of doing a little mix here where I want to do kind of a more blue, but I think I'm going to add a little bit of purple in here. Sorry if I sound a little raspy. It's been pretty cold. We keep forgetting to close like the little window out onto our patio, so it gets really cold in the middle of the night, and it's been giving me a bit of a sore throat. So what I'm doing is I'm making it a little bit darker underneath my eyes, because what I want to do is I want to make it really smoky blue on top, and then I want to make it kind of like a dark purpley on the lid. So, and I've had some people ask me if I was going to be recreating what they look like, and that's kind of not my goal. My goal is to do a look based on the character, but not one that necessarily turns me into the character. I'm trying to look for a nice purpley color. Oh, here's my shading brush. I thought I lost it. Okay. I really like that purple. I feel like I might have to deepen this a little bit, but for the most part, this is really pretty. I've actually never used this purple before. So what I want to know is, have any of you ever found any information on this movie? Do you know if there's anything out there actually showing or revealing that he did or did not kill her? Because I feel like, I mean, what if it could have been somebody else that had killed her, and, you know, he ended up getting there when she was, you know, like already dead or dying, and she was like, you left me for dead, because, you know, he was scared and he didn't know what to do. But at the same time, I kind of feel like he did do it, because he seems to have pretty sinister intentions when we see him with Victoria, and he's very, you know, cunning, and he holds himself very highly, even though pretty sure he's not actually a lord, and he's just going from town to town impersonating a lord to trick families into wanting their daughters to marry them, and then ends up murdering them or having them elope with him so that he can take all of the money for himself and go on to the next town. And if he did kill her, I'm also wondering, I mean, as far as the conspiracy theories go, if any of you guys have ever watched these conspiracy theories, or you're someone who believes in the conspiracy theories about it, what do you think about it? I feel like if Victoria was young when she went missing, I feel like she would maybe remember having that happen. But then again, her mother and her father seem to always lock her away and kind of, you know, seclude her. Not really sure what that's all about, but if that is the case, maybe she wouldn't remember if she had an aunt, especially if she had run away with all of the family's gold, you know, leaving them with nothing. She would be considered, you know, a disgrace to the family. And considering that she has an uncanny resemblance to her, at least I think so, maybe that's why in the film they call her, you know, they say she has a face of an all-time disgrace, and that she's going to be the one to get married and restore all of their money. It makes sense. Like, I don't know how people come up with conspiracy theories or even put this stuff together, because when I watched the film, I was just like, oh, that's a good film. And I never thought anything else of it, honestly, but there are some smart people out there. I'm also, in my research, it says that he's carrying a sword, but I don't know if I remember. If I do, I'll put a clip either here, somewhere in here, and show you guys, because I do remember him, like, when he walks into the church and he's gonna go, you know, fight Victor for Victoria, you know, saying, this is my wife, this and that and the other. I'm wondering, I'm like, has he been carrying the sword the whole time? And if he is, how come nobody thought that was weird? I mean, maybe for the time, because, again, this was like, it's supposed to take time in the Victorian England time. Maybe it was just normal, but I don't know. Seems pretty suspicious to me. And also, I feel like if he had been doing this for a long time, because he does look like a much older man, as the mother, I believe her name is Madeline? I feel like I'm saying that wrong. The mother talks, when she's talking to Lord Barkis, and he's telling her that he's Lord, this and that, I think she says something kind of like, aren't you, like, really old or something? She doesn't say that exactly, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, she insinuates that he's, like, an old-looking man. And so, like, if he'd been doing that for a long time, how would people not already be hearing about this, about, I mean, I guess no one really wants to tell the story of their daughters disgracing their family, if they're eloping, or, you know, just in general, if they're just being killed and they're dying. But it's still just really weird to me that nobody was talking about it. I mean, he couldn't have been much far from his last killing, and I really wish that they would make something, or Tim Burton would at least talk about a little bit more in depth about the story of it, because I feel like we're kind of missing a lot of bits and pieces, and it makes me real confused. So, this is basically the end of my story. And this is kind of what I was seeing in my head when I was thinking of the character. I was like, Emily, she really, that bright blue, but also that really purpley eye that they give her. I was like, I don't know why they didn't just give her kind of like a blue eye with the purple, because I thought it would look really cool. And it does. So I'm just gonna go ahead and finish off everything, do my lashes and all of that, and then I'll be back. give this a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will see you in next week's video. Bye! Did you just break something?